Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to watch my video on the Crossfire HD 12 to 36 power spotting scope. I think we'll start from the back here, keep some semblance of organization. We have a tethered eye cap or eyepiece cap, and we have the rear objective, which has an eye relief of 18 millimeters, which is pretty typical. It's pretty close, but it is not bad. If you're wearing safety glasses, I typically have to take those off in order to get a good view through there. My safety glasses sit too far away from my face and get in the way anytime I try to use this. Next, we have our magnification ring, which has about a 60-degree range of throw from 12 power around to the 36 power maximum. It's not very stiff. I don't have trouble with the scope moving around a bunch as I adjust the magnification. It stays pretty steady. I would honestly like it to be maybe just a little bit stiffer, but you know, it works and I'm not going to complain about it. On the outside of the scope, we see this neoprene protective cover. There are a set of clip-on caps or covers that go over both the front and the rear. I don't know what I've done with those. I can't find them, so I can't show you what they look like. But they are the same neoprene material, and they clip on and just give you some extra protection on your front and rear lenses. In the middle here, we have our focus adjustment. This is stiffer than the magnification ring and has a real consistent tension the whole way through the range of focus. I find that it stays the same even when it's cold outside. I've been using it throughout this last winter when it was, as low as 20 degrees outside, and it does stiffen up a little bit in the cold, but it never becomes too stiff to really be able to get a nice fine focus. On other spotting scopes I've used in the past, this tensioning can be so much that it causes too much motion and wiggling in the scope, and it makes it difficult to adjust that focus to get a nice clean image. On the bottom, we have a fixed mount for your tripod, which has this Arcus Swiss type connection, or you can get a 1/4-20 adapter that will allow you to use it in other types of spotting scope tripods. And then we move on to the front, and we have our 50 millimeter objective lens. The entire scope does have a armor type coating, like a ruggedized hard rubber texture on there, which is pretty matte in consistency, not very reflective. And this scope cap is tethered but removable if you don't like that sort of thing. The rear one is also removable. I leave them on all the time. I've never had them be in the way. Never felt like they were, causing me any trouble. And I've never had one fall off. So I just leave them on. If they were something that fell off really easy, I'd probably take them off. Otherwise, you lose the types of thing. If they can come off easily, they will fall off when you don't want them to. But I've never had that problem with these ones. And they kind of have a little textured ribs on there that engage the threading on the inside of there and just snap in nicely. They don't fall out. They twist a little bit, but you have to make an effort to pull those out. Let me give you some basic stats on this. The total length is about 10.5 inches, and the height from the bottom of this rail to about the maximum point of this is right at 6 inches. It weighs 30 ounces and has, like I said, an 18 millimeter eye relief, and the closest focus is right at 5 yards. I think they quote you like 13.5 feet, but if you're gonna go out there and measure your 13.5 feet to confirm that, you go ahead, but I just consider it 5 yards. And anytime I've ever used it anywhere under 10 yards, I don't have very many opportunities where I need to do that, but it will if you need it to. I think from here I'm going to go ahead and take us out in the field and get some shots of it at different ranges so that we can see how well it performs. So to start, I want to take a look at my scope eye chart. We are currently at 50 yards. Right now we are at 12 power. Let me go ahead and zoom us in. Now we are at 20 power. We can start to make out a lot of the details on there, and we have a lot to look at. We got our letter chart. We also have our 2 different color scales, and we have our individual playing cards. We have blackbirds in the background making a ruckus. So let's go ahead and do up to the maximum magnification at 36. Which is right there. I'll move us a little bit just to get some better center. That way we're not cheating the image at all. Touch my focus. Alright, so at 36 power, we have very good color representation on those color samples, both the red through purple and our tactical cool black, brown, tan, and green. You can make out as much detail as you want on the Christmas card, and on our letter chart we do see a little bit of a purple tint to those otherwise black letters, but we can make out all maybe the smallest 3 lines of letters, but everything else on there is very clean, very clear. And what's interesting, if you notice, that board is almost perfectly square in person, but if you notice how the edges kind of turn up and down as they go out to the edge of our field of view, there is a slight fisheyeing to that image. Not a lot, but it is noticeable. And it is, when you compare it versus the naked eye, it's really pretty clear. All right, let's go back to 100 yards. I have moved us back to 100 yards and reset us to 12 power. Let's go ahead and zoom in. All right, I've got our focus adjusted to be as clear as possible. We can see that most of the elements of that chart are clear and legible again. The finer details of the text at the bottom of the letter chart and on the individual playing cards is obviously no longer in focus, or no longer large enough to be read, but our color representation on those color samples and on the bullseye are still very good. I can tell from personal experience that spotting 22 caliber holes is no challenge with this scope. And go ahead and pack this up, and we will go look at some targets at longer distances. So here we are at 310 yards looking at a set of area rules and regulation signs for this conservation area. We are at 12x currently, and we will go up to the maximum 36x here in a moment, but I would like to take a moment to look at the overall depth of field, where those harvested corn stalks there at the bottom of the image are at about 115 to 150 yards, and then the line of the gravel parking lot and the sign is at about 200 yards, and then the signs that we're looking at there in the distance are at 310 yards. The berm behind it is going to be at about 325 yards to 350 yards, depending if you're at the bottom or the top of the berm. Just so you have some numbers to think about while we zoom in on this. But in this image at 12x, we see a very nice depth of field. There's sharpness of those cut corn stalks in the foreground, as well as in the tree line at the top of the berm in the background. And if you were using this for just sort of generalized spotting, you would have no need to change your focus at any point for look at that entire field of view. All right, so let's zoom up to our 36 power. You're going to notice a little bit of shadows coming in at the edges, and that is caused by the changing eye box and eye relief that this has. When you're using it with your naked eye, it's not as noticeable because you just sort of naturally adjust where your eye is at based on the brightness of the image. Going up, get us to about 20 power right there. I'll touch up this focus. Oop, wrong way. So there we are at 20 power. And again, our depth of field is still good. Those corn stalks that we can see there now are closer to about 140 yards. And the edge of that parking lot there, again, is at about 200 yards. But everything is still pretty well in focus. We do have a little bit of softness out there in the edge. And again, that is due to the fact that our eye box and our eye relief are changing. And it is too much of a hassle to adjust the camera to account for it, but with the naked eye, it is not that soft on the edges or hazy. It's still nice and sharp. So let's go ahead and go up to our maximum now. And we're going to lose some of the overall field of view top to bottom just because the camera can only accept so big of an image. There we have that. Now at 36x, those signs are easily legible. We can make out all the words on the white ones on these crossbars, and we can see the individual pages on the brown backer, but obviously that text is way too small to be seen at this distance, but we can make out the individual sheets of paper. I'm going to go ahead and brighten this image up just a little bit because it's actually slightly brighter to the naked eye. I've brought that up to what it actually looks like with the naked eye. Just a little bit more brightness and gives us the ability to pick out some more of those details on those signs and in the grass along the berm behind it. We do still see a little bit of that softness out towards the edges. And at this magnification with the naked eye, if you have your eye placement perfect, it does still render a fairly crisp image all the way out to the edge. There is, even with the naked eye, a little bit of a fisheye and a little fall off towards the edge, but the center of the image where you're going to be looking predominantly stays nice and sharp. I'm just going to pan this to the side just to show you what I'm talking about. If we move this over here, we see that our areas and regulation signs lose a little bit of focus, not so much on the left or the right side of the image as the left side of the image, but that's just a matter of camera placement. But the bundle of twigs and sticks and brambles right there in the center has now come into nice focus. All right, I'm going to move us out to a building to look at. So I'm going to pause this and change our point of view. All right, I've brought us over here to look at a brick building, which is actually a water pump, and the power pole next to it with the transformers on it, just to have some idea of what kind of clarity we can expect in some of these small elements of the building as well as the power pole. We start here at 12 power, and again, we notice the good depth of field. Those plants in the foreground are actually last year's sunflowers, and we can make it out a fair amount of detail even in those at approximately 100 yards, whereas our building out there is at 325 yards. Excuse me, 335 yards. The power pole next to it, the one further to the left, is slightly closer to us, right at 300 yards. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom us in now from 12 power. There's about 20. Clean up this focus. And there we have the view at 20 power. Let's see if I can. Some of the things to notice on this are the hail damage dimples on the stainless steel pipe that we can see, as well as how clean individual bits of grout look on those bricks. And we still have a very nice view of the tree line behind it, which is going to be at about, well, let's not guess, let's measure. The tree line behind it is at 475 yards. So 325 yards for the building, 475 yards for the berm and the tree line behind it. Let's go ahead and continue up to our maximum magnification of 36. So just for some scale, that red sticker on the bottom of the center transformer that says 75 is approximately 2 inches tall, and those insulator elements on the top of the transformers are about the size of a standard soda can. Obviously the bricks on the building are standard size bricks, but that just gives you some idea of the amount of detail that you can expect from this spotting scope at those distances. We can make out the individual power lines, we can make out all the lines going from the power pole to the building, as well as the insulation, or the heat baffles on those transformer insulators. And we can also make out quite a bit of the grain in the wood of that power pole itself. So really a very nice image at 325 yards. If you were using this for looking at birds or small animals, you would be able to enjoy a pretty good view even if they were quite small. So from here we're going to move on to another building. All right, I've brought us over now to look at the 575 yard building, and at 12 power we see the same nice clean depth of field with plenty of detail across the entire field of view. I will go ahead and spin us up to about 20 power right there. We're starting to see quite a bit more detail on that building, the bricks. We're also starting to make out some of the more fine detail on that transformer. Keep notice of the black number on that transformer. That is also the number 75 and approximately the same size as the red sticker on the previous building and transformer. I'm going to go ahead and zoom us up now. There we are at 36 power, and we have a very clean image. We can make out the number 75 on the transformer. We can see all of the power lines going from the power pole to the building. The grout lines are easy to make out, and so is the power antenna. If you look on the top of the building next to the red heat vent, there is a receiving antenna with a little black cable that goes back down into the building. And we can also see, again, the hail damage on our steel pipe coming off of the left side of the building. And we have a very nice image. For reference, the tan power pole in front of the building, or I should say obscuring one of the transformers on our power pole, is at 360 yards. So it gives you an idea that the depth of field in that between that 360 yard power pole and our 560 yard building, as well as the tree line behind it, which is at almost exactly 600 yards. All right, let's see what we see when we pan down here and look at these ladders and steps. And again, even at this distance, we can make out the hardware of the bolts holding the framework together. We can also make out quite a bit of detail in the grass along the ground below the stairs. And we have just a general overall nice image with very low chromatic aberration. So you would have no problem spotting even small game at that distance. Or if you were using this for precision shooting, obviously you're not going to be able to make out 22 caliber holes, but if you were looking for splash and your misses or spotting for someone else, you would have no issue doing that at this distance. So we have probably the last set of pump towers that we're going to look at today. The one there on the right is at just under 1,300 yards. I'm getting like 1,295 yards. Whereas the white building that's more centered in our field of view is at about 1,130 yards. Currently we are at the 12 power magnification. I'm going to go ahead and zoom us in. So we have quite a bit to look at here. That white building probably being the more interesting of the two, with its yellow handrails and the number 7 on the front door, which for reference is approximately 10, maybe 10-inch tall letter, probably 8. The building also, you can see the outline of that door and just make out some of the individual lines of the masonry blocks that it's built from. As we go a little bit further right on our field of view, I'm not going to try to give you the distances on all of those individual power poles. Just know that they are anywhere from about 800 yards to out there near 1,200 yards. Our pump building there on the right, the brickwork is a little bit tough to see. Some of that is just given that there is some haze in the air today, so it's kind of limiting our absolute range that we could see at. I believe the weather service was saying that the distance, absolute line of sight distance, is 10 miles a day, but in this floodplain where the humidity is always just a little bit higher as the moisture is coming up out of the ground, even on a cloudy day, we always have just a little bit more haze than we would if we were, say, 200 or 300 feet vertically higher than we are now. But we'll work with what we got. And then overall is a very nice image. You can easily make out targets, you can make out people, you can make out deer, anything you wanted to, all the way out there to 1,300 yards. We would have no issue whatsoever. Here we are back at my bench for the wrap up on this video to give you my final thoughts of this Vortex 12 to 36 spotting scope. Bottom line, I think it's a good scope. What I use it for most is for bench rest shooting and to help me zero rifles without having to walk down and check my groups every 5 shots or so, and it does a great job at that. The other thing I do like to do with it is when I go hiking, sometimes I'll take this instead of a pair of binoculars because it's light enough and I can put it in my backpack and it doesn't take up too much space, along with my lightweight tripod. But I think more recently my favorite thing to do with this is actually recording videos. The cell phone adapter that I use on this does a good job, and my particular phone, the S23 Ultra, just seems to work well with this. The way that the 36 power fills the field of view on that camera and the clarity of the images that I'm able to record, I really enjoy it for recording video. One thing I did forget to mention in the intro was this adjustable eye cup, sort of like you'd find on a pair of binoculars. This one has 3 detented positions where you can set it so that when you go to look through it, you can rest your eye right against the cup and maintain a consistent eye relief. And that's pretty helpful if you're trying to do it with it all the way in. I find a lot of the time that I struggle to get that exact spot that I need. I'll usually run it out to about the 2nd click. That allows me to rest my eye socket right against the cup and maintain a nice stable image. There's not a lot else to say about this. I think the video sort of speak for themselves. I was able to find the caps that go over this, little neoprene protective covers. So if you need that extra layer of protection, they connect to these little clips. There's little bungee connectors in there. I find them more of a pain than a help. Of course, I've never really drug this thing out into any really rugged terrain where I thought I might damage it if I didn't have both the front and the rear covered. So if you are looking for a lower power spotting scope, a more compact spotting scope, either for bench rest type shooting or for observing wildlife and recording wildlife, I think this is a really good option. If you can get it in the same like $175 to $180 price range that I paid for it on a Black Friday sale, I think it really is a good choice. It definitely gives a better view than the more budget-friendly $100, $129 Amazon special scopes. Plus you get Vortex's lifetime warranty, which is extremely solid and well known. If you break it, short of intentionally like shooting it with a rifle or something, they're going to replace it, no questions asked. Even if you find one of these used, if you can get a good deal on one of these used, that might be the best way to do it because the warranty is transferable. Beyond that, I don't really have much else to say. I do appreciate anybody that's stuck around this long to get all the way to the end of the video. And I hope that you hit that like button and leave a comment. I'd like to know if anybody else has one of these and what you prefer to use it for. And thank you for watching my video.